Welcome back to our devotional time. We're stopping by in Proverbs 31, and this is a familiar passage of text that you are probably more than familiar of, finding the virtuous woman. But our focus is going to be a little bit different on this devotional as we look at the first 9 verses or so. The sayings of King Lemuel, an inspired utterance his mother taught him. Okay, so we already have the audience and the speaker in this beginning space, the audience being King Lemuel and the speaker being his mother. And so listen to this. Verse 2: listen, my son, listen, son of my womb, listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. It is not for kings, Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all the oppressed of their rights. Let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Verse 10: a wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Now, me reading verse 10 is going to make sense here in a little while, but we see a compare and contrast Lemuel's mother offers him that I think, if we can really just hang on to the truth that's revealed from this passage, will help us even in our own processes of dating, of courting, and ultimately long-term commitment, marriage, and relationship and covenant with one person and with God. But I want you to pay attention to the first couple verses here that I have heard be used to describe, or people would share thoughts like, hey, this is proof that men shouldn't chase women, and this, that, and the third, and men shouldn't pursue women, all these kind of things. And so let's clear the air for a second on what it is exactly that's meant in verse 3. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. And just to give a different taste of the text here, let's look at New Living Translation. It says, do not waste your strength on women, on those who ruin kings. And so the focus isn't necessarily to say that men shouldn't pursue women. What this is actually insinuating is that a man spending his strength on women seems to be more focused on the man idolizing, in some way, shape, or form, romance and sex. He is no longer able to abide in his calling and purpose assignment that God has given him. Now, if you're looking at this, listening to this, and you're thinking this message seems familiar, let's actually break it down a little bit further. What this does not insinuate is that by way of focusing on your alignment, your purpose, and all these kinds of things, you ought to lock in on increasing your body count.
What I want is, I prefer guys to get their money on point, have sexual experience with women, become that guy, adhere to these traits, and then choose down the road, you know what, I'm ready for a family now, I'm in a position where I can do it.
Girls want a guy with experience. You don't want to date a virgin because you got to teach him how to really be a man. A guy with experience is attractive.
Have lots of women as a means of being a high value man.
I'll ask you a question, right? When you go to buy a car, I'm not saying a woman a car, I'm just giving you an example here. When you go to buy a car, right? What do you do first when you buy the car? You go to a salesman, talk to him about the car, test drive it, and you go buy it. I'm just saying, for most men, sex is a goal, but not the end all be goal. It's a part of the equation.
And in the process, devalue women as a means for you to look bigger and better as a man.
Put a woman on a pedestal, guess what happens? She starts to look down on you, and that is a problem. Women want to be with guys that they can have to look up to, not the other way around. Men lead, women follow. Knock her off that pedestal so she gets back down to your level and looks up to you. All right?
In often ways rooted from places of fear and hurt from previous relationships that men have encountered. In comparison to what Mama Lemuel, as I like to call her, labels in Proverbs 31 to her son, this is a very different message, and a message that is more focused on King Lemuel prioritizing his character, prioritizing his integrity, prioritizing his purpose, alignment, and calling that God has given him, and focusing on his assignment. That then, as we transition to the beginning verses that describe the virtuous woman, opens up the door for him to be connected to such a virtuous woman by way of his focus being on his assignment, the here and now. And ultimately, in this compare and contrast, Mama Lemuel gives these two perspectives, not only revealing to Lemuel what is ahead of him if he does not steward the here and now properly, but also who's ahead of him if he actually chooses to move in the right direction, stewarding his purpose and calling. And who that would be on the other side is him connecting with a virtuous woman. So here's the big kicker of why we kind of see these comparisons and all this advice that's given in the text and how it relates to us today. Men, how you actually win in finding the right woman for you isn't by getting reps in the bed with other women, increasing your body count. It's not defined by the material gain that you have. Rather, it's about being aligned in your purpose and calling that is God-given and that requires us being connected and devoted to Christ in order to have in our lives, that actually transforms our mind to be prepared for such a journey that is a long-term commitment with a woman in relationship in marriage. So it's important that you find accountability, that you find circles that you're able to grow and nurture with, that you are actually putting yourself in the best position to build and cultivate skills, to continue multiplying on the purpose and alignment that God has you in this season, and to really focus in on that, because that's actually how you're going to not only get ahead of so many other people who are doing the exact opposite, but actually separate yourself from the crowd, standing out in order for the eye of the virtuous woman to be caught by not just your looks, but your character, your integrity, your spiritual maturity, that then leads to greater things. And that all starts with our relationship with Christ. So if we really think about it, learning more and more of our calling and assignment that God has given and placed on our life, this is actually what's going to help us make more sense of the type of person we need to be able to support where we're going, support who we are in the direction that God has for us, and vice versa, learning the capacity that we have for the specific person that we may be in position to support as God is leading them as an individual to do what he's calling them to do and become who he desires them to be. But we can't really do all of that if we're too busy racking up body counts and misusing our singleness to manipulate other people in the process. So if you desire to know how you are selling the bag tremendously from being a man that you desire to be, having the wife you desire to have, raising the family you desire to create, here's the blueprint. You idolize romance and sex that as a result gets you to abandon your purpose and alignment in God for the sake of chasing pleasure and earthly status. And how do you know that you're in this lane? And the follow-up question seems to be, well, how do I know I'm in such a lane? And I think there are a few ways to determine this. One, there's a lot of short-term intentional and directional thinking that's happening here. You're not actually looking to seek out person that you can see yourself committing to for a long-term through marriage. You're doing these things out of loneliness, out of pain, out of hurt, out of desperation, out of boredom, every other reason except the right reasons, understanding who that person is, what's required of you to step into such a space, and looking to honor them as you are honoring God. Maybe you're building rosters, running get rich quick schemes, but just for women. You're trying to pick up on all these tips and tricks. And not to say that there isn't good advice on how to talk to women or how to engage with women, but there is a difference between learning that legitimately, that is influencing you to be who you authentically are, and learning different Riz pickup lines that don't even match up who you are, that makes you look a whole lot more troubling than you think you do. Not being honest with your approach and with your direction is another way to know that you're in lane two, because there are so many men in today's culture who have a way of using long-term language to cover up their short-term intentions. Truly, I want you, we in this thing forever, you and me, and all of those statements come out really fast. And typically it's seen as a method to try to confuse the person that they're speaking to in order to ultimately get what they're looking for in the short term, which is just a one-night stand that isn't beneficial. So men, it requires you to be honest. Do you genuinely desire to pursue this woman because you see qualities in her that resemble a wife that you would desire to build a life with? Or is this just another piece of meat to you? You're not really too concerned about what you could potentially build with this person. You're just concerned about the now, trying to fulfill your lustful desires and not keep your thing in your pants. Because that is a legitimate issue, and we have to be willing to work through that in order to progress forward, becoming the right man we need to be, to have the right woman we desire, to build the best family we can. And that can't happen by us trying to have sex with everybody, because that just distracts us. It doesn't heal us. So men, I need you to really catch this. Your purpose and your calling being aligned in such is what's actually going to create space for the virtuous woman that you desire. And there are so many men that desire a virtuous woman, but yet don't have the capacity for one because they're out of alignment from where God desires them to be. The two most important decisions you'll ever make in your life is having a relationship with Jesus and deciding who you marry. And if you aren't connected and aligned in what God has for you, getting into his presence, getting into his face, and developing a consistent relationship with him, you could be in a whole world of trouble, pain, and suffering, marrying the wrong person, all because we weren't focused on the right things and not doing the work that was required to be prepared. Not saying you'll be fully prepared for marriage, but to become prepared over time for the journey of marriage with Christ as your solid foundation. So focus your relationship on God, keep building, keep striving, keep cultivating. And I really do believe that by focusing on that, God has a way of connecting you to the person that you've been developing for all this time while developing in your purpose, that you'll have the capacity for to support, and they too will have the capacity to support where you're going. And it all takes time, all takes patience, but most of all, you've got some work to do. And it starts by focusing where God has you at here, right now, and remain faithful to it. And I think in the end, you'll be grateful on what is ahead of you on the other side. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, subscribe, like this video, and share it with a friend who could benefit from hearing such a devotional as this, potentially giving them a fresher perspective on Proverbs 31 that they may not have heard before. And I appreciate you guys so much. And until our next conversation, be easy and be breezy, my friend. Hey, peace.